I call this video conference meeting of the Bryan Independent School District to order. Let the record show that a quorum of board members are present via video conference, that this meeting has been duly called, and that notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meeting Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. This meeting will be audible to the board and public and allow for two-way communications for the board and district administration. The public has been provided telephonic access to this meeting as well. I wish to extend everybody truly a warm welcome to everyone. I will say that we are holding this meeting because there are some issues, a couple of agenda items that are time sensitive that we need to go ahead and try to address as soon as possible. Having said that, I will also comment that we're going to really trim down the initial agenda, and as we get to various parts, we will move them to the next posted meeting, because we do have people that are joining by cell phone, etc., and unlimited power. So if at any time we do drop below a quorum of board members, then we will immediately go on basically a 10-minute break or hold for 10 minutes, and then stop all business. And if the quorum is reestablished, we'll pick up where we left off. If not, we'll go ahead and conclude the meeting at the end of that 10-minute recess. So we have asked both the presenters, and I'm going to ask the board members that to certainly feel free to ask any questions that you need to ask, but we're going to try to keep any comments to a minimum so we can get through before we lose power or on cell phones. So with that being said, I will run down the pledge of the, well, actually, let's go ahead and take care of our local governance issue first up, and that's to administer the oath of office to single member District Place 5 trustee. Serving as the interim is David Stasny. So I don't know if Miss Lee was able to join us.
She wasn't, but I'm going to go ahead and do it.
Okay. Okay.
Mr. Stasny, I don't see you on my screen. Is he here?
He was a minute ago. He was when I started.
Yeah, I saw him earlier.
Well,
hopefully his didn't go out.
Okay, I tell you what, we will circle back to that if he rejoins us. The Pledge of Allegiance originally was going to be recited by Branch Elementary. We're going to go ahead and postpone that, as well as the spotlight recognition. We're going to postpone all the spotlight recognitions, and there were no citizens' comments submitted via the posted email. So we will move right down into information items, and first up is the Bryan ISD Virtual Academy update.
Hi, good evening. Mr. McCall, I was wondering if we were going to still continue with this agenda item or if we were going to wait until the next posted meeting, sir.
I tell you what, if we can wait, then we'll
Yes.
Then let's go ahead and move into the Teacher Incentive Allotment and Strategic Planning Committee update, which is one of the time sensitive issues that we're here today about.
Yes, sir. That is me. Let's see if we can get this going. All right, should be able to see my screen at this point. So thank you for giving me some time this evening. I know it's very precious. The Teacher Incentive Allotment, this is our second update to give to the Board of Trustees. as an overview of kind of the progress of that strategic planning committee that I spoke to you about last time. We actually have a full planning committee as well as teacher focus groups that run alongside that committee. And they've been quite busy as we've prepared to develop the plan.
Excuse me, let me just jump in here. I'm on the phone because I wasn't able to do video. Can y'all hear me?
Hi, Mr. Chasney. Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay.
And
well, this is the best I could do. I'm on a landline.
all right. We will circle back as soon as the information item's over. We'll circle back up to the swearing in.
Okay. All right. Sorry about that.
No worries.
Welcome, Mr. Stasny. So the teacher incentive allotment, like I mentioned last time, has three main goals per TEA: to reward, retain, and recruit the best of the best to stay in the teaching workforce, and to reward those who do the most to move our students forward with growth. When we talk about our plan, we're talking about basically three big decisions. We're looking at who can earn a designation, which teachers, how we will designate, and as a district, each district creates a plan for developing those designations, and then how and when will we compensate for those who receive those designations. When you break those down a little further, the committee is beginning with these two squares that you see kind of highlighted here. Who can earn a designation, which teaching assignments. And as I mentioned last time, there's quite a bit that goes into that, including aspects of part 2, that student growth measure. And then we can also include, or required to include rather, observation data. And we're going to speak a little bit about that in the coming weeks as well. And then any optional components. After we get those big decisions created and decided, if you're not in the first year of teacher designation for the TIA, then the district's going to create a plan for how to bring in other phases of teachers into that designation system based on the development of reliable and valid student growth measures. And I'll speak to that a little bit more here in just a few minutes. We also must look at how will we weight the various components that are required and optional, if the committee decides to include any of those, in that calculation of the teacher's score for the TIA. That can be 50-50. It can be more heavily weighted towards student growth or through observations, or you can also include some other components. So that will be the next big step for the committee. And then finally, the committee work will conclude with how and when will we compensate? Last time I spoke a little bit about that 90-10 split and making determinations on how that 90% could be distributed at the campus level to the designated teacher and possibly others on the campus if the committee so decides. And then also, what does that 10% look like? And I'm going to speak to you a little bit later on tonight about a potential use for that 10% related to TIA. But anyway, that's the big three decisions that the committee has been tasked with and charged with, and they're making progress on. So the first big decision is that regarding the student growth measures. So there are 5 potential student growth measures that can be utilized on a teacher incentive allotment designation system. And with each one, there's a rubric. So there's student learning objectives, pre-test, post-test, value added measure, portfolios, and other student growth measures. And TEA defines 2 student growth measures within this particular section of the rubric. One is STAR growth, and one is MAP, Measures of Academic Progress, by a company, a nonprofit, NWEA, the Northwest Educational Alliance. So those are the 5 options. Now there are 5 on the table, but really there's only 2 on the table, and here's why. Student learning objectives, pre-test, post-test, and portfolios. In order to utilize those for student growth, they have to have already been in place in your district and you're running data models on it. By that, I mean, you're looking at student growth and you're looking at observation data, and you're looking to see that there's a strong correlation between an increase in a teacher's observation score and an increase in student growth. You're also looking to see that those student growth measures are at the same level of rigor as a STAR growth measure or the MAP by NWEA. What I mean by that, it should be just as challenging and rigorous for a 5th grade ELA teacher to receive a designation as it is a 5th grade music teacher or art teacher or physical education teacher. And so they're looking to see that there's no skew to the data in terms of how that's determined. So if those haven't been in place across the board on all campuses at all grade levels that fit that particular measure, well, then you need to do a pilot year first where you can implement student learning objectives or pre-test, post-test, or even portfolios. And then you measure that data all along the year, and then you put those targets in place to get to that same level of rigor. So that leaves us with value added measure, which is typically aligned to STAR. So since TEA already produces STAR growth, that already meets that measure for us. And then there's also measures of academic progress, like I mentioned before. And so the committee had asked us to look further into MAP, and it actually has been a software and an assessment tool that we've looked at in years past, and have always been quite impressed with it, along with a number of other assessment packages that provide a more longitudinal data set. So we did go back and we looked more at MAP and what it could offer our district, and in particular our teachers and our students, and if it was a good fit. So here's what we currently utilize. So when we talk about current assessments that are in place, we have the developmental reading assessment, the DRA, and there's the corresponding Spanish version, the EDL, at grades K through 5. That assessment is administered individually 3 times a year, and it takes between 10 and 30 minutes per student each time you administer it. There are associated running records looking for word fluency, and those are done as needed by the teacher. They can be done weekly, but they take 5 to 10 minutes per student. We have a program called M-Class. This is actually put out by the state of Texas. It is one of the required items in kindergarten that's on the commissioner's list as the kindergarten screener. I think there are two options there, M-Class being one of them. It's also utilized in first grade for a dyslexia screener, which again is required at the state level. But it's still utilized in second grade as well. It too is an individually administered assessment 3 times a year. At the younger grades, it's 15 minutes, but it can get upwards of 30 depending on the needs of the student. We have another package that the board has voted on previously, and that's Imagine Math. Imagine Math itself is an intervention tool. But in order to place the student on a pathway within Imagine Math, the students need to take an assessment on the computer 3 times a year, beginning, middle, and end of the year, to determine the right pathway based on that student's needs. So when we talk about that, it's a group administration, not an individual administration, so it takes a little less time. We also administer a fall benchmark in grades 3 through 10 for ELA and for mathematics, and in certain grade level science as well. And then you see we have some other testing that happens, the Iowa as part of the GT screening, and then some special education reading screeners as well. All of the assessments you see on the screen, MAP could replace. It doesn't mean those other assessments have to go away. For example, if a teacher really wanted to use the DRA with a particular group of students who had some unique needs, they could still do so. They just wouldn't have to administer it to every single student 3 times a year and individually. So the measures of academic progress, MAP by NWEA, could satisfy all of the needs that you see on the screen in terms of the placement for Imagine Math, M-Class, running records, DRA, all of those things. So what does that mean for the classroom teacher? When you think about a second grade classroom, M-Class would take a teacher approximately 18 hours of instruction to administer over the course of the year, beginning, middle, and end. The DRA would take approximately 27 hours. This is based on a class size of 22. Running records, it would vary. Imagine Math, 2.5 hours because it's a group administration. So a total of 47 hours, give or take, would be utilized on all of these assessments. The MAP administration would take approximately 3 to 4.5 hours in total for ELA and math combined. And then you could also add in science at the upper grade levels. So what we like about this solution is, one, a consistent assessment program that would make multiple measures and provide lots of data that could help our teachers know how to best support our students individually, but also the recapturing of instructional time and what that could mean for our classroom teachers in terms of the time they get to spend with students and streamlining their workload to put more of it back towards instruction. And you can see a similar model over there for third grade as well. So in looking at all of these things, we brought this information back to the committee and we said, okay, if you had a preference and a priority, what would be your priority in terms of what to use for the student growth measure, knowing that MAP would take board action. And there's also some funding aspects to it that we would need to consider. So we asked them to prioritize their preference. On the left-hand side of the screen for option A, you see that we utilize Circle for pre-K. That is actually what most districts are using for TIA across the state for pre-K level. So that could continue because we have multiple years of data that we can use to run those targets. But for ELA K through 12, Math K through 12, and any teacher who is science grades 2 through 12, MAP by NWEA could serve as the quality, reliable, and valid student growth measure. This would encompass about 700 teachers on the teacher incentive allotment. The other option, option B, still utilizes pre-K using Circle, and then we would expand M-Class to go up to 3rd grade. It would be an individual administration, but it would allow us to capture 3rd grade teachers and ELA as well. Star Growth is available in grades 4 through 8, and then also 10. It's not available in 9th grade because the new element of the writing component that happens at 9th grade, and then also at 3rd grade because there's no prior year data. And then for mathematics, there is a Star Growth for grades 4 through Algebra 1. There are some concerns with utilizing Star Growth, one being the uncertainty of testing participation this spring and what that might mean for growth data in the coming year or the lack thereof. And so there is a little bit of uncertainty there with that. But option B would still let us include up to approximately 465 teachers in the teacher incentive allotment in the first year in terms of the application. So when the committee took a look at it, their preference was to begin with option A. And if that wasn't a viable option, then they would go with option B. And that would be the student growth measure for year 1 of our TIA. Now, I think it's important to realize here, going back to our 3 decisions, this is just the year 1 application. It is probable, likely, and without a doubt, a need to continue to apply to TIA annually until we get our other groups of teachers into the designation system in a way that's reliable and valid. Remembering to go back to that 2-tiered data process where you have the application and that can be accepted by TEA, but then you must pass the data test with that set of data that goes through Texas Tech University. So what the committee has been doing now is forming subcommittees for any other teacher group that we don't think will make it into that first year because there's not a reliable and valid student growth measure. And developing those tools, what is the best match for that particular grade and subject? If it's a fine arts teacher, is the best match a portfolio? Is it a pre-test, post-test? Is it a student learning objective? And working with the teachers of those courses to design what that will be so that we can pilot that implementation of those tools throughout the course of next year. So we're ready for the application to expand more teachers into this. The committee is also going to be looking at observation information here. We utilize T-TEST, the Texas Teacher Evaluation and Support System, and that is the one that is recognized by TEA. They utilize it as reliable and valid, so long as those scores are correlated to the student growth, meaning as the teacher's observation increases, so does student growth. And so they're going to look for a correlation between those 2 data sets. So the committee this week will be actually tackling those issues and diving deeper into that conversation. I'll bring more information back to the board about that progress. They're also going to look at that weighting of the categories. How much is student growth? How much is teacher observation? And are there any other components? So that's really where we are right now. CTE, PE, Fine Arts, Social Studies, World Languages, Self-Contained SPED, they're all forming subcommittees and developing timelines on how they'll develop the best student growth tool for that population of teacher and student so that we have valid and reliable data to make that next application. And then finally, we'll be coming back to the committee to look at that distribution of funds, and that information will also come to the board. Part of this process includes the board taking action, and in particular, taking action on the disbursement of these funds. That is a board governance item. And so we'll be bringing that back to you along with the full application. We are offering informational sessions for teachers later this week and early next week. They're optional. but we wanted to give them a time where they could hear an overview of TIA, ask some questions, and learn about the work of the committee. We will circle back to every campus in April as the process develops and finalizes, and do dedicated presentations to what TIA is and our application, so that there's clarity for teachers and they know what has been submitted. Mr. LeBlanc and his team have also launched a website specifically dedicated to TIA, and will include the minutes from the planning committee, as well as any other informational videos and handbooks that are developed along the way to help inform our teaching workforce of what's possible in Bryan ISD. So that's a little bit of an overview of where we are with TIA, and I'd certainly welcome any of your questions.
Well, that was quite a bit.
Yes,
This
sir.
is, you can hear me okay? I would just make this comment, I guess. This sounded like an awful lot of work, and clearly it is. I guess I'm thinking, though, that perhaps a side benefit of this, and maybe it's not even really a side benefit, is really putting the focus on how we can measure student achievement better and really do better for our students. So regardless of I mean, that's certainly very important, how we allocate the funds and so forth. If we actually accomplish this, is great. But I guess I see that as a good thing. Obviously, I guess hopefully y'all do too. That we're going to get better at evaluating not only student performance, but how well teachers are doing, both at the same time.
I couldn't agree more, Mr. Stasny. Yes.
Mr. Stasny, let's go ahead and swear you in so that you can move about and speak as freely as you choose before we go
Right.
to
Yeah, I don't want to
anyone
just be an
next.
outsider here.
Yeah.
No worries. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. Repeat after me, please. I, David Stasny, do solemnly swear
I, David Stasny, do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully execute the duties of this office
that I will faithfully execute the duties of this office
of Bryan ISD Board of Trustees,
of Bryan ISD Board of Trustees,
single member District Place 5 of the state of Texas.
I'm not sure I
Single
heard all that.
member
Single
Place
member
5,
District Place 5 of the state of Texas. Okay.
and will to the best of my ability
And will to the best of my ability
preserve, protect, and defend
preserve, protect, and defend
the Constitution and laws of the United States
the Constitution and laws of the United States
and of this state, so help me God.
and of this state, so help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Glad to be back.
And I know the rest of the board got an update on this, an overview on this in the last workshop, and I actually stood on that committee. So, I'm sure we'll have some additional comments as we get later down into the actual action item that we need to take tonight on this.
Barbara, I want to say it's just amazing, and it's very obvious how much work you and everyone around you is doing for this. And it sounds so much like you have a lot of the bases covered as far as getting this information out to the stakeholders. And I just can't tell you enough how proud I am of what you and your staff and Matt and all the people that are pushing this out. And I'm sure our teachers are really, really going to buy into it and appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Waller. We have a tremendous team, and when they saw they could do something to help our teachers and also help our kids, they were all in. It was wonderful.
Yeah, I was just going to add that we've heard about this also in the instructional committee. I think that was last week, or is that finance committee? I'm confused, but I've heard it a couple of times. So great job. Thank you for the update.
Thank you, Dr. Harlan.
All right. thank you. And we will, do we need to cover image filtering software updates this round or today?
No, we can certainly wait. We can wait.
Okay. All right. I keep seeing people in cars, so I want to,
Yeah.
I don't want to,
Movie.
don't want to bypass or move. Okay. And following that, that will take us down into the standing committee update. We're going to go ahead and postpone the city, school, and finance committee updates. We will table those until the next normal meeting. And Dr. Whitbeck has an updated, I believe.
Yes, good evening, everyone, and thank you for your diligence in cars, planes, trains, wherever we have to be. We appreciate you, and in crazy weather. Tonight, I just have two things that I'd like to share, but they're both very timely. One, I believe that Mr. LeBlanc is going to place on the screen our recent survey results for the 5th 6 weeks. Here they are to show you that Bryan ISD will now go from 82 to 85% face-to-face as a district. So we're very pleased about that. It's a 3% gain, but you can see the breakdowns there. Our elementary will go from 90 to 92, intermediate 89, middle school 91, and as expected, the majority of the online learners are at the high school level, with 70% face-to-face. And then of course, many utilizing the hybrid to attend just their lab-based courses and performance-based courses. So I wanted to share that with you. And then the next thing that I wanted to talk to you about is just to let you know kind of a weather update and where we are today. Just prior to the start of this meeting, and as you know, our Board of Trustees communication from me that we have made a slight adjustment, but tomorrow we will cancel classes. Tomorrow, February 16th, and we will go virtual Wednesday through Friday the rest of the week. Now, as you know, looking at weather forecast, it does appear to get somewhat better on Friday, but after visiting with Ms. Carabine and facility staff these last 24 hours, we are concerned about pipes. We want to make sure that we have heat in every building, and as many of you know, until the temperatures get above freezing, it's somewhat difficult to assess whether things are frozen or not till they begin to de-thaw. So we're going to go ahead and go virtual the rest of the week, and those communications should be going out to our families. So we want to encourage our parents to think out of the box, and we've even, Mr. LeBlanc, fun website or a link that the parents can, if they're doing some creative ways of learning, this is a good time to go back to some old-fashioned reading, flashcards, memorizing math facts, having older kids read to younger kids, and playing some board games and other ways that also enhance your learning. But our teachers will be busy with their Schoology and the lessons there for families. So even with the rolling power outages, we're just asking everyone, do the very best that you can. A little bit of learning is better than no learning. And then we will be ready to greet our students on Monday morning. Do you have any questions about our decisions in this regard?
I just wanted to compliment you guys on putting in there to acknowledge that people may continue to lose power. I mean, as soon as this hit, Facebook just blew up with, well, we don't have power now. How are we going to have power then? And it was already addressed, right? So we preemptively said, we're going to offer you grace. Do what you can. Do the best you can. It's fine. Don't freak out. We're all good. And by it already being in there, it was very easy to quickly respond. Please reread the letter. Like, it's okay. Just do that. And so I thank you and the communications team for being thoughtful in that aspect.
Thank you.
Yeah, I also wanted to add that I appreciate that we went ahead and let people know rather than doing this on a day-by-day basis where people are left trying to figure things out at the last minute. So I know we did that, I guess Friday, whenever we made the call about Monday, and I immediately saw social media posts about people just being so thankful that they had the advance notice, and we were right. So it's a good thing that we did not have school today. So thank you.
And just as an interjection there, on Friday, our students in grades 5 through 12 who do access BISD technology were able to take those with them. And our elementary students were able to take home workbooks or materials that their teachers gave them to work on in anticipation of this week, not really thinking would be all week, but knowing that we needed to plan ahead. So again, thanks to our Board of Trustees for the additional expenditures and technology that have allowed us to have so many devices out amongst our community.
All right. Thank you for the update. Yes, I know as we're seeing here, energy continues to be an issue across the state, and we certainly want to do our part. So thank you for that update, and again, thank you for the advance notice going out to the parents. That's always appreciated. It's mentioned. Okay, if there's no other questions or comments, then we will move on right down into the consent agenda, and I'll entertain a motion there.
I move approval of all the items listed on the consent agenda.
Second.
I have a motion by Ms. Benford, a second by Ms. Harland. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion passed, consent agenda is passed, and that will take us into our regular meeting items. For our items for discussion, our regular agenda. First up, we have 2 items on the business services. And first up is to consider and take possible action to select the delivery method, providing the best value for the Rudder addition projects, and to authorize the superintendent or her designee to take all action for the procurement of such services pursuant to statute and board policy.
Yes, thank you, Mr. McCall. This is an item that we've talked about quite a bit over the past few months, but board policy requires that the provided or the preferred method or required method for a project for delivery and contract award for construction contracts valued over 50 competitive sealed proposal or CSP. If another method is going to be used or is deemed to be more beneficial or better value for the district, then the board has to take action before we advertise or begin on this project. And you might remember we've just gone through this with the intermediate 3 and maintenance and transportation, and we're utilizing that method so far with seems like that's a good result. So tonight we bring forward this recommendation that we would use the construction manager at risk method for that, or the CMAR for the Rudder addition project.
I move approval that the board select construction manager at risk, CMAR, as the method of procurement of construction services as providing the best value for the Rudder addition project, and authorize the superintendent or designee to take all action for the procurement of such services pursuant to the statute and board policy.
Second.
I have a motion by Mrs. Wayne, a second by Ms. Benford. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. Motion carries, and we'll move down into the next item. Similar, consider authorizing superintendent to negotiate and enter into a contract for architectural and engineering services for the Rudder classroom addition project.
Yes, sir. And this is, again, getting the Rudder classroom addition project up and running. The district put out a request for qualifications for architects on this project. I believe we received 14 submissions to that. After going through a committee of Bryan ISD staff members, evaluated that and invited the 6 top the 6 top firms to come and interview. After the interview process of 6 very qualified firms, the committee tonight is recommending that we award the architectural and engineering services for the Rudder Classroom Edition to Corrigan Architects. And this project will be one that's funded by the 2020 bond project.
There's no questions, and I'll entertain a motion.
I move to authorize the superintendent to negotiate and enter into contract for architectural and engineering services with Corrigan Architects for the Rudder Classroom Edition project.
Second.
I got a motion by Mrs. Dwayne, and was that Dr. Davis that seconded it?
Ms. Waller.
Ms. Waller, okay. I wasn't looking at your square, so I didn't see him. And a second by Mrs. Waller, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries, and we'll move down to the district calendar and the teaching and learning section.
Yes, sir. Mr. LeBlanc, will you enable the screen sharing? I can't project, or if you want to project it.
It should be there now, ma'am.
Got it. All right, thank you so much. It's my pleasure to come to you tonight, and I'm the fast version. I know we came into the boardroom on February 1st to give you an update of the process on February 1st again. So if you have any questions, just stop me along the way. But with that, we have, we started with a comprehensive committee that met actually from November through January to look at all the different decisions that we needed to contemplate to come up with the ultimate calendar to go out to survey. We had a feedback loop throughout the process. We launched the calendar survey from January 25th through February 7th. And the work of the committee certainly considered many variables, including the pandemic, the unknown of that for next year, all the required training elements, the compliance features, including the 75,600 minutes. We launched our survey, and I'm pleased to tell you that even though we're in the middle of a pandemic, our participation rate was 4,082 responses compared to 4,308 last year. So we had a very good turnout, looking at previous years. And I'll go right into the survey results. Anytime we survey our community for the calendar, we break it down into different categories, including students, staff, our parent guardians, community at large, and the total responses. See on the screen for students, 348 or 50% voted for draft calendar A compared to 342 picking B. So it was a very narrow margin, but A beat out just a tiny bit for our student population. Our staff, however, 767 staff members chose A. That's 61.56% compared to 479 votes, which is 38%. So our staff clearly favored draft A. Our parent group, it was 1,062, which is 51.90 compared to 981 votes, which is 48%. Community was 67 people choosing A compared to 36 choosing B. So the total responses choosing calendar A as the favored choice, 2,244 votes, which is 54.7% compared to draft calendar B at 45%. So with that, we know that calendar A is the preferred choice. We reconvened the calendar committee. We went over all the results. Everyone agreed that draft A is our recommendation. To remind you just very quickly, the calendars were pretty similar. Draft A had a few more full days of PE, again, which is very conducive for hard training throughout the year. And should we have a pandemic for next year, we can certainly meet the needs of our school community with that as well. This is just draft calendar B, showing you there were a few more early release days. This was the comparison chart that you've seen before on the workshop update. So should you choose to approve calendar A, which is our recommendation, we will execute the communication plan starting tonight. So again, we recommend draft calendar A as the calendar for next school year. Any questions?
I move approval of the 2021-2022 academic school calendar for Bryan. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong one. I move approval of the 2021-2022 district calendar as presented.
Second.
Thank you.
I have a motion by Dr. Harland, and I believe a second by Mrs. Lane. Nope. Dr.
No, that
Davis?
was Dr. Davis. Yes.
Okay.
David.
I look for your microphones to come off, and sometimes I miss it. So got a motion by Dr. Harlan, a second by Dr. Davis. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we have a calendar for next year, and that will lead us right into our follow-up calendar for collegiate.
Good evening. So I am on the heels of Ms. Carabine to ask for your approval tonight for the Bryan Collegiate High School calendar, which is, of course, driven by the now district adopted calendar, which is draft A. Basically, we have a couple of changes where we have swapped dates from Monday staff development dates to Friday staff development dates to allow for kind of a meshing with the Blinn College calendar. This is something that we bring before you every year. So we're asking for your approval. We are still in compliance with our 75,600 operational minutes, as well as these changes allow us to be in better compliance for Blinn contact hours as well.
I move approval of the 2021-2022 academic school calendar for Bryan Collegiate High School as presented.
Second.
Now y'all just talking over each other, but I heard Ms. Benford there, so motion by Ms. Lane and a second by Ms. Benford. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Thank you.
Collegiate has a calendar, and then that will bring us back, circle back to our maps. Informational item that we had earlier today, or earlier this evening. And discuss and consider approval of a purchase over $50,000 for the Northwest Evaluation Association measures of academic progress. I've probably heard it enough that I can present it, but Dr. Ibarra, you might want to, you probably do a better job if you're.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I appreciate that. All right.
I get the dollars wrong.
So I promise I'm here if you can't see me. I tried to turn the lights on in my car, but I think you can see me well enough. It's really important that you see the screen, not so much me. So this evening, I'm bringing to you a request for authorization to purchase measures of academic progress by NWEA. But let me begin first with why. The thing that this would provide our teachers and our students goes well beyond the bounds of TIA. It provides teachers with accurate and actionable information to help target instructions for students. That's the purpose of a truly robust assessment system, rather than a singular test at a singular grade level. This is a system. It will allow us to recapture instructional time, like I mentioned earlier, but it'll also give us longitudinal data. MAP will be able to show parents and teachers the progress of a student beginning as early as kindergarten and then up through the 12th grade for as long as the board would authorize the purchase. We will be able to show that a student from beginning of the year to middle of the year to the end of the year, and then seeing what happens over that summer timeframe to better adjust for the needs of the students when they return to school in August. It also will give us consistent assessments. The part that I like the most about this, though, is from the parent perspective, how much information you get about your child, about what their learning needs are, about what their true progress is, and you get to celebrate the growth with your student and with your child. While it does measure achievement, it accurately measures student growth. And so we look at both, right? We want to make sure if you're not quite where you wanted to be by the end of the year, did you grow? Did you grow a full year? Did you grow more than a full year? And that's certainly cause for celebration. It does align to the state standards. It is a nationally normed assessment, but it does align to the state standards. And I'll give you a little view into that in just a little bit. So we're looking at two products that work together in this system, MAP growth and MAP reading fluency, those two things together. The company itself is a nonprofit, Northwest Evaluation Association. It's research-based. It's been in business, I think, around 1970. And it has millions of student results. They renorm that data set nationally every 3 to 5 years to set those growth and achievement targets. It's in over 400 schools and districts in the state of Texas, as well as 9,500 across the nation. This is why TEA mentions it in the rubric, because it is a research-based assessment program. So basically here you can see on the right-hand side that kind of longitudinal look at a child over time. We get what's called a RIT score for the child in each subject that they take an assessment for through MAP, which helps us identify learning gaps, helps us align instructional resources. It tracks longitudinally. It even integrates with our third-party software. I mentioned earlier Imagine Math. And so that RIT score is given to the Imagine Math program. And based on that, Imagine Math knows what type of program and pathway to put the student on in Imagine Math to better help the student grow. It is administered 3 times a year over a computer, beginning, middle, and end of the year. The younger grade levels, this takes approximately 30 minutes. At the upper grade levels, it can take between 45 and 60 minutes on average. But again, it's K-12 math, K-12 ELA, and 2 through 12 science. When we take a look at some of these, I'm not going to go into deep detail at all on any of these, but I wanted you to see some of the screens. On the left-hand side, when you see comparisons here, you see both the growth of the child and the achievement of the child. So this particular child has high growth, but low achievement. But high growth, they're making progress. They're making progress to fill in those gaps to where they could get to that achievement level. It shows their trajectory since the fall of 15 to the spring of 18 at the bottom of the screen. And with that, you can even see that it looks at meets, approaches, and masters. We're starting to look at those star cut points and shows you where they predict this child will be by that particular time if the growth continues at the same pace. So there is some predictive analytics, thus the fall benchmark could be removed altogether. And it even has some correlations to SAT and ACT performance where you can start to see some of the progress there for the child. This is one of my favorite views. This obviously is a sample data set that's provided by the company. But these quadrants of achievement versus growth. So the bottom left-hand side, the red squares, low achievement, low growth. And then conversely at the top, high achievement and high growth. But what's interesting to me is the student they have highlighted here, low achievement and high growth. The student has struggled academically historically, but is making great growth. And in fact, they're on the cusp of tipping over into that high achievement area. That again is something to celebrate. And equally important for the teacher to know is those students that are at the bottom quadrant on the right there. They're achieving, but they're not growing. they may be passing and even excelling on their assessments, but they're not growing in proportion to where they could be. And so that shows us something else. We need to offer some enrichment and extension activities for those students. So this is also provided as a part of this system. When you get into the reading performance levels, this one has to do with the reading fluency. Those running records that I spoke to earlier, the teachers can do those. They take 5 to 10 minutes per kid on average to administer, or as part of the guided reading rotation of stations. I know the board heard a presentation about guided reading in the fall semester, but essentially what it would allow is one of those stations to be a reading fluency station where the students read into the computer. Helps with our TELPAS as well, oral proficiency, right? But the teacher can then hear the student reading and can see the results on how many missed words, how many omitted words, and with that get a better gauge of their fluency on a more regular basis to be able to know how to help the child. And then from the family's perspective, this one's a little, I haven't seen a report like this, I don't think, but they're at the 99th percentile for everything. This was a sample report, obviously, but it gives the family, your child is high achievement and then also high growth in this situation, 98 percentile for achievement, and then the same for mathematics, which is entirely possible. But anyway, this one's mathematics, but the parents would get these summary reports and be able to better understand where their child is. It also gives them some projections there for college and career, including SAT and ACT, like I mentioned earlier. We've already talked about this, but again, it allows us to consolidate student assessment. And then, like I spoke to earlier, recapture instructional time, working directly with students rather than simply assessing them. It's important to know where the child is. And if we have other tools that can help us with that, then we need to. But I do want to say again, it doesn't mean these tools aren't valid and needed, and that a teacher may still use them from time to time at their own discretion. Perhaps they have a student who is on the who's on a struggling learner with perhaps a particular area of reading. They could administer the DRA to get a different set of data to just triangulate against, and just better help and understand where the needs of the child are. So as a part of this process, before bringing this to you today, the district's teaching and learning team, from bilingual to special education to general education to advanced academics, to our response to intervention, we all looked at this software along with another, in fact, and felt like this was a good fit for Bryan ISD. It did go before the strategic planning committee for TIA as well as the focus group. All in total, that's over 70 teachers and approximately 30 district and campus administrators, and all prioritized this as the preferred growth model. But I wanted you to see, I know this is very tiny print, but I wanted you to see some of the feedback from the teacher focus group. They were asked to give us some feedback on if we should move forward or consider anything else. And overwhelmingly, the support was there for MAP by NWEA. Some of the teachers noting that they used it in previous districts and were hoping that we would also move that direction, that it gave them invaluable data to best help their students and provide targeted instruction to meet their needs. And they liked the recapturing, obviously, of the instructional time during the instructional day. Oh, my car just went off. Sorry. So the TIA committee actually recommends this as their first priority. And then, of course, because it incorporates more teachers, but more importantly, because it does provide us the opportunity to best assess our students in a way that's meaningful and to provide targeted instruction. The cost analysis for MAP. MAP doesn't come without a cost. It is $254,597 annually, and that is a recurring purchase, but it would offer K-12 ELA math, science, as well as MAP reading fluency. The cost can be offset somewhat because of the utilization of other tools. For example, the no more needing to print fall benchmarks or even our district-based assessments because the board's authorized the purchase for technology in the district. Right now, we do have the funds available in our federal funding program to cover the cost of the MAP implementation. That's roughly, $254,000. It would be out of Title I and state comp ed. In the future, The teacher incentive allotment can also serve as an offset to this funding, as a funding source to offset the cost of MAP for its implementation. If the district moves forward with reserving 10% at the district level for the administration of the TIA program, including the student growth measure, then part of it could be funded out or maybe entirely out of the TIA 10%. But knowing those funds wouldn't first hit the district budgets until at the earliest 2023. And so that is a future funding source, but we wanted the board to understand and know that our recommendation was to begin now with the federal funding source of Title I and state comp ed. So I leave you with a quick summary of benefits. Once again, the longitudinal data set, including the largest number of teachers in the TIA, and most importantly, recapturing instructional time in a way that provides meaningful assessment to target instruction for our students. What questions can I answer for you?
Barbara.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, at the intermediate, middle, and high school, I could see who the point person would be for each student's information, and that would be for academic or their counselor, correct?
In terms of their needs, ma'am?
No, say I'm a parent and I don't understand or I need some help on this. I know we're not going to get the parent to call every single teacher and try to disseminate information. So if a student has, say there's a glitch, or if a parent has a question, all this information, I know they have access to it, but when they call the school and have a question, whatever it may be, logistics or maybe they think it's right, who will they start with at K-4? And
Well,
then
actually, I think I understand your question, Mrs. Waller. They actually will start with their teacher. So the job embedded PD will be in small chunks during their planning periods and during that focus time for teacher professional development, because we want to make sure the teachers fully understand the assessment piece. Certainly counselors, administrators, district staff will all receive the support they need to interpret the results and apply the results. But we would hope that they would talk to their teachers first, get their first questions answered. But that's certainly not going to be how it's rolled out. It'll have to be rolled out with some parent explanation and even some parent meetings so that they understand how to best utilize that information to understand where their students are. So a team approach for sure.
okay, so if we're for the parent is all teacher for whatever it is, that right? Instead of a point person with this information per student?
It really should be the teacher to begin with. But if there are questions beyond that, they'll have a system that they can pass it off to the next person with maybe a little bit more expertise in some of the other questions the parent's asking.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Barbara, can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir, I can.
Okay. I'm playing catch up and not able to see anything tonight because I didn't have enough data on my phone, and we still have no power here. But anyway, I having said all that, this is such a big deal, and I just wanted to ask a couple of questions. One is there? I have no doubt that this is something that y'all really believe in. Is there anything that we have that is going to be that we're paying for annually or there that we could say, well, we don't really need this anymore? I know that you wouldn't be asking for this if we didn't have the ability to fund it, but it would be nice if there was something, if it's clearly not that necessary anymore, that is pretty expensive, that we could say, well, let's discontinue that. Is there anything along those lines, or are we pretty much not in a position to delete anything that we're currently using?
So unfortunately, some of the softwares that we currently use are free from the state. And so while we're not doing that software, there's not a cost savings other than the instructional time being recaptured. Where there is a cost savings is under the administration of benchmark and district-based assessments and those becoming digitized. It's roughly $50,000 for that, sir. And then the additional possibly $10,000 for the Iowa, and the map could substitute for Iowa as part of the GT screening process, as well as some substitutes that we end up hiring so that there can be benchmark grading. And so there's another roughly $10,000. So really the offset in terms of the budget is roughly $60,000. But the real recapture comes in instructional time, where approximately 40 hours in a second grade classroom, and then a little less so in a third grade classroom. But yes, sir, we did look, what could we no longer need? What could we recapture in terms of time, effort, and finances? Yes, sir.
Well, as you know, sometimes I ask questions just to try to, not so much that I don't really kind of have an idea what the answer is, but to reassure the public that we're doing everything we can to not only be the best, but also to be as careful as we can be with the funds, so that we're being good stewards. So I know you and your staff well enough to know y'all put a great deal of effort into this. So and I guess the company clearly has a good track record. I think you've tried to allude to that earlier, so that once you get into something like this, hopefully they're going to be around for a while.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
So Mark, I would have a question about how the motion is written, because this is a 1 year expense, but it doesn't have that in the motion. So I see the motion and it says as presented, but normally when we do those for 1 year, or we have a range on there, and since this is going to have to come up every year or so, does that need to have the year on it, or am I being weird?
I think we can take the motion as it is a yearly expense that we're committing to. And if you want to add that in, that's fine. But I want to just kind of circle back and say that having sat in on the committee, a couple of comments real quick. One is, in my mind, looking at the technology that we currently have, and this dovetails back into, I believe it was the December meeting where we had the statistician presenting all of the great information that her group and her department does via spreadsheets. This is what she was cautious about telling us about. But our teachers have become, I think, have started to become very dependent on that data in those schools. But how they use that data is also probably open to interpretation and kind of constantly moving target. This cleans that up. It's one of the big missing pieces that we have, that right now, even if we didn't have the other reasons to move this direction, in my mind, it helps us identify those gaps that were brought in introduced by COVID, that we know that it's not going to be a 1 year catch up. It's not going to be 6 months to catch the kids up to the next grade level. And so this can really help us streamline that process, focus in and build that consistency. One of the other items that I really liked about this is it is used by various other school districts in the area, and the information that is captured within the maps does go with the student. And so if a student transfers from one school district to another, their maps data transfers with them. So to me, it really is a longitudinal student tool that focuses on that student and that individual's success, which I think we've had some pieces put together that fill that gap, but this brings it into that consistency, and really makes it institutionalized so that we have that data, and that data is consistent year from year. The third item was simply that if you notice within the presentation earlier, there was another option, and that other option was to use STARS test. I love the teacher allotment, don't get me wrong, but I think a lot of that driver is to increase student performance, and increasing student performance is ultimately measured on that STAR test, and on the state test. So if we're using that to measure our performance, it's too late, in my opinion. So I don't think that's more of a lag measure than a leading measure. This brings us into, gives the teachers a chance to get in front, no matter if they where that student's coming from. But I will throw this last comment in about the committee. The only time I interjected into the committee was when we started going down a rabbit trail where the committee was trying to figure out how they were going to come up with the different funding sources to fund it. And I had to stop them and say, hey, hang on, let us figure that piece out. Y'all tell us what y'all want and why you want it and the impact it's going to have. And then we'll Dr. Ibarro, Ms. Visal, and the board, and Dr. Whitbeck, of course, will figure that piece out, and hopefully we'll be able to get y'all the one that y'all want, but or the one that has the best fit. So so those are my comments. I love that the teachers are really wanting this tool. They can see the value and the savings. So
Yeah, I heard about this multiple times, but most recently in the finance committee when we met last week. And it's really exciting when you think about where we want to be in terms of measuring student growth and achievement, and the kinds of data that we want to put in the hands of our teachers. And so Barbara mentioned to us then that this was one of her wish list items a long time ago. And so it's exciting that we're moving in that direction. And I apologize for my dogs.
Dog is expressing his support too.
Yes.
No, it sounds really good. I think it's let's face it, that's where we are, is where we've got to give the tools that we need, and it just takes a deep breath, and obviously this is not a quick decision or an impulse decision. This has really been carefully thought out, and so I think it's I'm certainly very supportive of it. It's just always a little eye-opening to see the numbers, but again, if it's going to actually help in multiple ways, as has already been discussed, then you got to go for it and see what happens.
I move approval of the purchase of the Northwest Evaluation Association measures of academic progress as presented in the amount of $254,597.
Second.
Second.
I have a second by Mrs.
Too late,
Waller.
Ricky.
I saw her square light up first. So have a motion by Mrs. Delane and a second by Mrs. Waller. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. All right. And now that that's passed, I'll tell you that was a critical decision to move the committee forward. And the committee is working on a very tight timeline in order to get it in this year. So thank you. And I'm sure we'll hear many thanks from the committee as well.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah. Good.
All right. That'll move us down into technology services, considering approval of the contract for E-rate Category 2 hardware refresh, licensing, maintenance, and battery backup.
Thank you, Mr. McCall. Yeah, so I'm bringing to you the contract for E-rate category 2. So just as a quick refresher, E-rate is the federal program that helps fund all of the infrastructure that allows our students and staff to connect to the internet, as well as other local resources that are stored on servers and things like that. So it's all the fun stuff that no one ever really gets to see. So in particular, this year's E-rate bid, we're recommending that CDWG is the winning vendor for the category 2 bid. The hardware that's going to be purchased as part of this contract is going to replace 5+ year-old infrastructure at Bryan High, Rudder High, and the Technology Service Center, which are really the 3 main cores of our network. Everything flows through those locations in one way or another, just about. Also included is some licensing. The licensing will be used for all of the rest of our existing wireless access points and switches and those types of things, so that we can continue using them. And there's also UPS battery backups that are part of this bid, which are used to protect all of our core network equipment for things like when we have power outages and things like that, to keep them from becoming overloaded. The total cost, if funded through E-rate, is $286,410.63. I should mention that this E-rate program, the reason we apply for it, why it's so valuable to us, is it does give us a discount based on the free and reduced lunch numbers of the district. So we are actually getting the equipment at an 85% discount. Thank you.
This is one of those things I think we're used to seeing, Rob. It comes about I think we do one of these every year. I move approval of the contract for E-rate category 2 equipment and licensing as presented.
Second.
I have a motion by Dr. Harlan and a second by Ms. Benford. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Motion carries. Thank you. All right, at this time, we will go ahead and move into closed session. So the board will now convene in closed session to discuss the following items as allowed by Texas Government Code Chapter 551.074, personnel matters, and .072 real estate. No voting will take place in the closed meeting. Any action the board wishes to take as a result of the discussion in closed session will take place after the board reconvenes in the open meeting. It is now 7:13. We're recording. So the board reconvened in open session at 7:46. No action was taken in closed session. And there's no action items to take up at this point. So if there's no further comment, then we are adjourned. Thank you.